With a crumpled photograph of her baby in her hands, Marylin was ready to waste away between bottles of wine and cigarettes. 2 years earlier, when she found out she was pregnant, she discovered her life was incomplete. Just letting the days pass and the body age was a rather poor way to exist compared to the transcendental experience of being a mother. That mixture of tenderness and life that she carried for 9 months in her body now lay inert in the morgue. Marylin suffered every day of the baby's illness as if she were the one suffering from itself. Now, as she looked at the photo of her little girl, she remembered how it all began. At just 6 months old, Marylin's daughter Rose suffered the first in a long series of episodes that would gradually deteriorate her health.
Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story.
A small trickle of greenish saliva dripped from the corner of her lip, and Marylin immediately knew something was wrong. The only support Marylin could count on in her life to support her daughter was her mother, since the baby's father abandoned them as soon as he found out about the pregnancy. And it was the baby's grandmother who tried to calm Marylin down by telling her that health problems in babies were very common and did not necessarily indicate something serious. However, Marylin's concern indicated something else. It wasn't just her status as a first-time mother that made her overestimate any problems with the little one. It was actually a sixth sense that her baby needed professional attention, so she didn't hesitate twice and left with her baby girl immediately for the hospital. Unfortunately, Marylin's worst fears came true. The doctor who attended to the little girl congratulated her mother for her concern and informed her that if she had not gone to the hospital as quickly as she did, her daughter would probably be dead. Tests showed that the little girl was suffering from a rare tumor in her vital organs which, unfortunately, threatened to take her life. From that day on and for 2 years, Marylin embarked on a difficult journey to and from the hospital. She underwent extensive treatment to try to recover her entire body from the disease, and over the course of those 24 months was taken to surgery 5 times. To make matters worse, insurance covered only a small portion of the medical expenses, and the family's financial situation was not the best. But to Marylin, the financial issue mattered least. Her only real interest was that her little girl's health would improve very soon. For her sake, she was willing to do whatever it took. She washed toilets, cooked, did housekeeping, and accepted any job offer she could to get the money to pay for her medical treatment. For a while, everything seemed to be going well, because although the health implications of that little girl continued and the surgeries happened from time to time very often, the exams indicated that the tumor began to diminish little by little, awakening a flame of hope in the hearts of the mother and grandmother. It did not matter to them that the drug that they were being prescribed for the child's body was now more expensive. Now the baby's grandmother began to work as well. Although she had not returned to work since her retirement years ago, it was impossible for her to remain indifferent to her daughter's efforts. All she wanted was to save her granddaughter's life and make her daughter happy. The time came, however, when no matter how hard the grandmother's mother and mother tried, the money they collected was not enough to cover the hospital's expenses. It was then that they were forced to turn to the solidarity of friends and relatives who fortunately knew how to respond by donating all the money they were capable of to help those women who appreciated it so much. But even then, the weeks passed and the money collected began to be used up very quickly. Marylin and her mother began to despair as they no longer knew what to do to find a way out of such a difficult situation. Then, the unthinkable happened. The young doctor who treated the baby from the very first moment had become so attached to the child and Marylin that he decided to assume the medical expenses. He was a doctor by vocation, and the only thing that interested him was to take care of that life. This was the long and intense ordeal Marylin and her mother had to go through to save the little girl's life. However, despite all these efforts, one morning they received a call from the young doctor telling them that the girl's body had not responded in the best way to the last surgery and her health was quite affected. He didn't want to be alarmist, but he feared the worst and told them that if they wanted to see her alive, they should go to the hospital immediately. But even then, Marylin kept the faith and knew all would be well. She was a woman of prayer and found that her little girl had to be entrusted to God, convinced that He would work a miracle and not allow her to die. So when she arrived at the hospital, the mother remained calm at all times, went to where her little baby was, and while kissing her, she said a little silent prayer that everything would go well and in the right way. Unfortunately, things were not going to go the way Marylin wanted them to go from the start. A couple of hours later, the doctors gave a medical report that the little girl had died because she could not tolerate the drug they had injected to try to save her life. The news devastated the mother, who felt as if her whole positive world had collapsed before her eyes. She felt that nothing had been worth it and returned home, where she locked herself in her room and decided to waste away with wine and cigarettes. She wanted nothing more to do with the world, for nothing made sense to her. The reason for her existence had died, and Marylin felt that she too must die. The woman was convinced that no one could get her out of that room, but her mother managed to do so by asking her to at least go to the morgue to say goodbye to her daughter. That demand made Marylin react, and even though she had pretensions of wanting to lose her life, it seemed unfair not to say a last goodbye to the person she had loved so much for the past 24 months. And it was in the morgue, while holding her daughter in her arms, that Marylin made a startling discovery. Convinced that there was no room for medical error, the mother did not notice that her daughter's body still had the warmth of a living person and would have left without noticing anything, except that the moment she placed her baby on the stretcher, the baby opened her eyes and smiled. Marylin was so convinced of her daughter's death that she thought she was witnessing paranormal activity and went in search of the doctor who had become her friend. The doctor thought the woman was delirious with grief and went down to the morgue just to make sure everything was in order and to calm Marylin down a bit. But then, once there, his eyes couldn't believe what he saw. The baby was alive on the gurney. The doctor took the little girl in his arms and ran with her to the floor where she had been treated, convinced that at any moment she could lose her life. But what the test showed was simply unbelievable. The little girl was totally healthy. It was as if her body had never had any kind of tumor. The young doctor insisted that it must be a mistake, but no matter how many tests he performed, she was fine. He, who was a skeptical man and who was sure that the baby had died a few hours before, saw all his scientific arguments disarmed and had only one possible explanation. It had been a miracle. And this was precisely the last reason he had to approach Marylin in a way that would transcend the professional. The man had been emotionally attracted to the self-sacrificing mother for a couple of months, but had not dared to approach her, fearful that he was crossing ethical boundaries, and this was not allowed. He didn't want Marylin to think that he intended to take advantage of the financial collaboration he was making, but he decided to stop being overly cautious and follow the dictates of his heart. He did not want to pass up the opportunity to be at the side of a woman capable of loving so intensely as to bring her daughter back from the dead. To his surprise, Marylin had also felt attraction for him, but only until now, when her daughter's health problem had been overcome, she dared to open her heart to that relationship. If you like this video, don't forget to leave your opinion in the comments. Give us your like. Subscribe to the channel if you want to know more stories like this one.
If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with someone who may find it interesting. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next one.